Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and welcome to the first in a series of CIVIC virtual forums. I'm Jane Kirkland and I'm joined today by two of my colleagues, Megan Shope, Program Associate for the CIVIC Scholars, and Amasa Smith, Director of Programming and Communications. It's my privilege to welcome you all to the first in a series of virtual discussions for alumni. Today's virtual audience is comprised of more than 180 engaged and dedicated leaders, and we're grateful that you've joined us. Needless to say, though, we're all social distancing. We're connected more closely than ever by our common goals. We're all praying for the health of our families and friends during this pandemic, and we all want to retain some sense of normalcy again, whatever that might look like. We put together a rockstar panel today to help us to better understand our current situation, both from a business and political point of view, but also to help us understand what a new normal in Virginia may look like. Before we begin, again, just a few tips on engagement. Our first session will last for approximately 50 minutes, and if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A section at the very bottom of your screen. Please remember to do this for each of our guests this afternoon. And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is my privilege to introduce our first panelist of the afternoon, a gentleman perfectly situated to help us to understand how the business community is adapting to this pandemic and what may lie ahead. Barry DuVal is no stranger to most of you. The Newport News native was named President and CEO of the Virginia Chamber of Commerce in 2010. Under Mr. Duvall's leadership, the Chamber has become Virginia's largest business advocacy group. His private sector experience includes serving as president and CEO of Duvall Associates, Inc., and a diverse real estate firm from 1983 to 1996. Upon the completion of his term as the Secretary of Commerce and Trade, he served as president and CEO of Kaufman Knowles Consulting. Ladies and gentlemen, we're so grateful he's joined us today. Barry, thank you for your time and for sharing your thoughts. And at this point, I will pass the virtual floor over to you.
Thank you, Sarah. And to all those who are watching in this new normal or the new abnormal, it's great for me to be here. I am Barry DuVal. I'm a native of the Virginia Peninsula. I was born actually at Fort Eustis, and my father was a sergeant major at Fort Eustis and retired there. In my 20s, I got involved in local government. I ran for city council and was elected to city council in 1988 in Newport News. In 1990, I was elected mayor, and I served for 6 years as mayor of Newport News, and obviously had the benefit of working with a lot of leaders in the region at that time, and went on to be Secretary of Commerce and Trade. One of the things that I learned in my public life and economic development is that regions really grow and prosper along regional boundaries. They don't prosper along political boundaries, they prosper along economic boundaries. And I also learned that leaders are not born, they're made. And they're made through training, and they're made through investment and service. And I want to commend CIVIC for the organization that you are, the 50 official individuals who are involved in this leadership program, and for the history. I think this is, I've spoken to this group a few times, and I really like to see the emerging leadership coming out of this organization. I know that you have a great program lined up for you today. You'll hear from the people within Kemper Consulting. They'll do a good job of recapping the General Assembly and answering some questions and other initiatives. I'll touch on the General Assembly some today. I think you're going to hear from my good friend Aubrey Layne, who is a native of Hampton Roads. He is the Secretary of Finance. He'll do a good job of talking about the economic impact. So I thought it may be beneficial for me to talk a little bit about, make sure you know the State Chamber of Commerce, where we are with this COVID virus, a little bit about the General Assembly, some of the things we do at the State Chamber to help local chambers and businesses throughout the state, and then take some time for Q&A, and look forward to the next few minutes with you. So I'll move quickly through a PowerPoint. We'll go to this next slide, and I'll just share briefly with you. The Chamber of Commerce for Virginia is the voice of Virginia business throughout the Commonwealth of Virginia. I know Bob McKenna is one of your classmates this year. Bob is a good friend, and he runs the Peninsula Chamber. And certainly that chamber is a partner of ours, and that chamber is the voice of business on the peninsula. As the voice of business, we have a goal to remain nonpartisan, and we work to improve the economic climate of Virginia. So we endorse ideas, we don't endorse candidates. Next slide. I want to tell you a little bit about our membership growth. As Sarah said, I took over in 2010. We had a little under 1,000 members at that time. In the last 10 years, we've grown to be the largest business organization in the Commonwealth. We have about 27,000 members today. Every dot on the screen represents 25 members. And we are the largest business organization in the state and speak on behalf of the business community to those in elected office and public policy makers. So that's a little bit about who we are. I'd like to go ahead and move to the next slide and give you a quick update on where we are in this process of COVID-19. I'll start with just a map because pictures can say more than words. Obviously, the darker shaded areas are the higher concentrations of where this virus is, and the lighter areas, it's less concentrated. About 13,000 cases today, a little more, and we are continuing and hopefully reaching that peak as projected by the Washington University Center for Medicine. And as we begin to come down from that peak, we'll begin to see Virginia reopen. And during Q&A, I'll try to take some questions about what reopening looks like and how we, in fact, can move towards reopening the Virginia economy. But following the governor's direction, that's going to happen as we see trending going down in a 14-day period. Okay, next slide. From April 13th to April 19th, we saw about 4 million Americans file for unemployment. The total now is reaching 25 million filing for unemployment, and about 10% is the estimate for the Virginia unemployment rate. This is all coming from Magnum for Virginia, an economist that we employ. And I'll simply say about the unemployment rate, you might remember about 8 weeks ago when Virginia's unemployment rate was about 3.2%, America's was about 4%, and we have dramatically changed since then. We know about 237,000 Virginians who work in restaurants have been unemployed or laid off or furloughed. So it's had a major impact. We can go to the next slide. I'll just say in summary, America and Virginia has never as quickly moved into a recession as we have moved into this recession. And so it has essentially for America removed all the job creation that has occurred since the great financial recession of 2009. Having said that, most of the loss has occurred in those jobs that are service-oriented, hospitality-oriented, entertainment, and the like, and obviously a lot of retail. I won't spend time going through the federal act, but the Federal CARES Act has put a lot more money back into the economy, and we're grateful. I'm working closely with our federal officials on this program. Next slide. And we have created a resource center, and we've been very pleased with the response of this COVID-19 resource center. You can go on our website at the address above, and you can view all the Commonwealth of Development initiatives, all the federal initiatives and programs, and you can get assistance for everything from the healthcare impact to the business options that are available for you as a small business. Next slide. And then I send a weekly newsletter updating this information as well. We have about 45,000 people that receive this each week. Be happy to add you to that newsletter. You can just contact us at our website or me, and we'll be glad to provide you the weekly updates. Next slide. Coming soon, and I will mention this in context of the governor's announcement Friday, the governor announced a panel of business leaders to help represent every industry and to begin to get input as to how Virginia can begin to reopen for business. We are going to launch a center to and ask you to partner with us in accumulating the best practices for reopening, making the case by industry as to. I hope you can hear me, and I apologize for that. I
Don't
will
worry.
quickly move through the rest of this presentation and do some Q&A. This was the last time this happened. I was actually on a screen with Tim Kaine. We were connected to the Lynchburg Chamber, and the last time this happened, so I'll have to look into the connectivity issues with this platform. But Senator Kaine and I have done a few of these. We've been very closely working with our federal officials and with local chambers to make sure we're staying connected. Let's go through the next slide and let you know if you want to see our COVID Resource Center, just go to this website. Next slide. I'll go through this General Assembly pretty quickly. Next slide. I know you have other speakers. I just want to focus on two slides. This was the leadership of the General Assembly in the House before the election in 2019. So take a look at the slide in your region and where the leadership came from. And then we'll go to the next slide. And just to show you how the shift in Virginia has occurred away from Southwest, away from Southern Virginia, and up to Northern Virginia. So it means a lot when we're talking about public policy to know where the leaders come from, and we're connected to those leaders, and so is your chamber. Next slide. The General Assembly met this fall. They adjourned on March 7th. They reconvened last week. I'll give you a couple of summaries. And again, I want to allow Kemper Consulting to update most of the public policy. Next slide. There were about 3,900 bills introduced, and we tracked as a chamber about 700 of those. Next slide. These are all the topics that were discussed. You'll hear today about the budget, but all these topics were considered. Next slide. We communicate to the General Assembly every week. If we are interested in a bill being supported, we give it a green thumbs up, defeated a red thumbs down, and we have a lot of success and influence with our advocacy group. Next slide. Again, about 2,000 bills passed, about 1,000 bills have already been approved by the governor. Next slide. And about 47 of the Senate and House bills were amended, and 2 budget bills were amended as well. Only 1 vetoed. Next slide. We develop our public policy through a grassroots effort called Blueprint Virginia. The next picture will show you that we presented our first blueprint to Governor Terry McAuliffe 2 weeks after he was elected. We worked with him for 4 years on implementing Blueprint. Our goal is to get Virginia back to be the top state. We presented our next Blueprint 2025 to Ralph Northam 2 weeks after he was elected. And again, the goal is to get Virginia to be the best ranked state in America. We work in these 9 areas, and we will close with talking about military and veterans affairs. Our small business healthcare bill passed this year, the General Assembly. The next couple of slides tell you a little bit about the bill. It allows us to bring small businesses together with fewer than 50 people to be viewed and priced as one insurance program. It will reduce small business health insurance about 15 to 20%. We hope the governor will consider allowing this bill to become law. The next couple of slides show you the result. The General Assembly rejected the governor's amendment to consider it again next year. They just last Wednesday approved it to become law 33-7 in the Senate. It goes back to the governor. We hope that he will allow it to become law. Thank you. This is you can go to our website and look at the frequently asked questions, or if some of your small business clients have an interest in joining our effort. We'll be doing this through the local chamber, so the Peninsula Chamber can facilitate this. We hope it becomes law in the next 20 days, and we'll tell you more about it. Next slide. The last big topic I want to talk about was protecting Virginia as a right-to-work state, which allows workers to work but not being forced to join unions. We have a great relationship with unions in Virginia, but we formed the Virginians for Employee-Free Choice. And I'll skip through a couple of slides. These were 2 bills that we opposed, which would have hurt Virginia and actually forced workers to join a union or forced them to pay union dues. We defeated both of those bills. And I'll turn your attention to the next slide, which actually you'll hear Virginia is a place that is #1 for business, but not for workers. The next couple of slides will show you the fallacy in that theory. Virginia really got this best state for workers through a hard work and promotion on our part. Best state for business. This worst state for workers came from a Oxfam study that has been widely criticized. Tim Kaine has criticized it. They only actually measure a few areas of to evaluate. The next slide will show you all the areas they don't evaluate. So they don't look at talent supply. Virginia's among the best states. They don't look at education. We have one of the best education systems in the country, in our higher education system, public safety, quality of life. So they don't consider most of what makes Virginia the best state for business and for workers. So go to our website. You can look up this study. If you hear Virginia's not the best state for workers, take a look at this slide and you'll see all the factors that Oxfam study did not consider. Next slide. A lot of support from media. The next two slides are basically headlines from across the state supporting the Chamber's position to keep right to work, the law of the Commonwealth, and we were fortunate that we were able to do that. The last slide on this just talks about the two bills that we defeated. And if you go to the next slide, I'll close by saying you can join the Virginia for Employees Free Choice. Go to vaemployeechoice.com, go to our website and sign up, and we'll keep you informed about the ongoing effort to put Virginia in a column of forcing people to join unions. I'll just say this, as the Secretary of Commerce, I've traveled to 24 foreign countries and promoted Virginia as the northernmost right to work state on the East Coast. I hope that we can continue to be that because it allows freedom for individuals to join unions or not join unions if it is in their benefit. So that's all I'll say about that. I want to close by talking about our foundation. And our foundation is a 501c3. The goal is to make Virginia the best state for business. I'll tell you about a study that we did about 4 years ago with Virginia Tech and BEDP from the governor's office, and we identified the challenges. We put together our blueprint, and the next result is what we achieved last year. And that is the CNBC national ranking. The headline read, Amazon had it right, Virginia is the top state for business in 2019. This is a point of privilege for the Commonwealth. We were not just ranked #1 overall for business, we were ranked #1 for workforce, and we were ranked #1 as the best state to secure an education. This is significant for us, and I want to compliment all of you who are involved in higher education, improving our quality of life, because Virginia deserves a lot of recognition. The question I asked the General Assembly that was meeting and the governor was, can we keep it? And that's the question that we want to focus on. Can we keep that #1 ranking? We have some headwinds now, and I'm hoping we can keep it. Next slide. Our longstanding strengths I just talked about, education, workforce, quality of life. We still have things to work on, though, and areas for improvement. More funding for early childhood education, more funding for Marketing Virginia, more funding for broadband. Clearly, what I just went through a few minutes ago. I think I lost the internet connection here. But we have more room to improve. And then lastly, I'll tell you, if you want the results of how Virginia competes nationally or how your industry reflects nationally, you can go to our website to this dashboard that we've developed, and it's updated every month, and it tracks Virginia in about 50 different areas of competitiveness. The last thing I'll say is Hampton Roads and the Virginia Peninsula is a high concentration of veterans. We started through our 501c3 a partnership with the Virginia Department of Veterans Services, and we launched a couple of years ago a Hire Vets Now campaign. It's a joint initiative. The next slide. It will tell you that we bring together employers and those leaving the military in the next 6 to 12 months and create a partnership so those employers can actually meet with those rotating out in the next 6 to 12 months. These are last year's dates, and this year we've actually doubled the number of activities that we've had. And the results for last year, over 200 employers participated in 14 events and about 1,561 transitioning service people. Now, I will tell you, Virginia has about 20,000 transitioning service people every year, and we keep about 10,000 in Virginia. Our goal is to keep 15,000 in the next 5 years. Our result has been 80% expanded their network, and our company, 72%, we're able to hire people. So we're very proud of this program, and we'd like to partner with you and your company. If you're interested in being one of the companies that goes to the military bases with us, contact us, and we'll help you get into the Hire Vets Now program. Thank you very much. Sorry for the technology delay. It's about 2:26, and I'll turn it back over, Sarah, to you and to others to see if there are any questions. But it's a privilege to be here, and I hope that you found some value in that presentation. And during Q&A, I can talk a little more about how we move towards getting Virginia back open. But thank you.
Yeah, thank you so very much. I think it certainly has opened everybody's eyes on the fact that that broadband connection is going to be pretty important. So but we appreciate it. We do have a couple of questions here. The first question is from Bob Fitzgerald. He asks, how much support have Virginia companies received from CARES, the Small Business Act, via the Payroll Protection Program and also the EIDL programs? Do you have that information to hand?
We will send that information to you. Our public policy team is on the call, and we have access to that information, and we will see it. I will say that we've gotten a significant amount of money. I think the total number that I read was over $100 million has come to the Commonwealth of Virginia in some form or fashion. You have to also remember the enhanced unemployment available. So if a person makes more than $38,000 a year and they're furloughed, they can receive about $978 per week. And that has actually kept money flowing into the economy. And those individual workers will receive that for about 10 months. And then many of our small businesses have had access. But another round just opened up last Friday. We expect more money to flow to Virginia companies. But we'll get the exact number and send it to you, Sarah, and your team, and you can disseminate it.
That would be wonderful. Thank you. We also, we were asked earlier on if the presentation would be available to our alumni afterwards, and I understand that that would be the case as well. So for anybody who's just joined us, that will be something that we will distribute after the call. Kathy Owens asked a question about the governor announced members of an industry task force that will be assisting with creating reopening guidelines for numerous industries. Can we get the contact information for this task force?
We will be glad to work with the governor's office and forward that to you. I will say that we have about 4 of our large member companies present on that task force. And we're pleased with their representation. I was with one of them from Amazon this morning on a similar call, a similar platform. And what we intend to do is launch a blueprint for getting Virginia back to work. And we would like to solicit from your participants today their best practices in their industries. Many of the companies on this call today are probably already working or back to work or working in essential industries. Those companies have best practices that they put in place. And Sarah, we'd like to send them the survey that we're going to do over the next 2 weeks. We're going to accumulate that by industry so we can identify by industry what some of the best practices are and how they envision implementing getting back to work in a safe manner. We don't envision this as a switch that gets turned on, that all of a sudden everything is back to pre-COVID. We see it more as a dial that will get turned up. And what we anticipate is that we'll be able to begin to make recommendations directly to that commission. I know the 4 board members and companies that I have on that commission are looking forward to getting our input. Our goal is to put forward a statewide plan that has regional focus. So I know, for example, the Hampton Roads Economic Development Authority is working with Bob and the Peninsula Chamber on a regional plan that has a long-term horizon of how to be the best region it can be post-COVID. We want our state plan to link with those regional plans. So CIVIC should be a part of that. Your members can be part of that recommendation. You can do that directly through us, and we'll send you the survey. And then we will send you the blueprint plan later that we're recommending to the Governor's Commission.
That would be wonderful. Thank you. I do know that there are a lot of leaders who have reached out and said that they are ready to step up and to, be part of that solution as we work to the recovery phase. So we would very much like that opportunity. Thank you. So one of the other questions that we had, and this is in light of the freeze, the video freeze that we had, is the light, it brings to light the need to accelerate the rollout of the 5G technology in the Hampton Roads region, as well as the fiber ring supporting connectivity to the 2 offshore fiber cables. more bandwidth is definitely critical to this component for the new Virginia normal. And that was from Dan Henkel. So do you have any thoughts on the way that now we've adjusted our business model to be more on that online setting, whether this would be something that would take more of a priority maybe than it did in the past?
One of the things that we want to do is not allow this crisis to go to waste. We want to make sure that we learn the lessons from this crisis and that we have an opportunity to come through this crisis stronger than we did before. A lot of CEOs around the country of major companies are implementing lessons learned for the future. And one of the lessons I think we've learned is the need for 5G and investments. We need to be more connected in the future than we have been in the past. We need our platforms to be stronger, faster, more dependable. And I think that the southeast area of Virginia is in a unique position with these subsea cables coming from other continents. They'll be coming through the Hampton Roads region. It really positions the Hampton Roads region with a competitive advantage. And I think that connectivity is extremely important. As demonstrated now, a significant portion of Virginia is still working. I think you should ask Secretary Aubrey Layne, ask him what percentage of Virginians are still working and receiving a paycheck. He'll know the answer to that question because the state budget is 60% based on employee withholding. So that's a number he'll track. And well, we've lost a lot of people. I mean, we know several 100,000 are out of work in Virginia. We also know there are a lot of people still working. Approximately 4.2 million people were working in Virginia before COVID. So he will be able to tell you if 500,000 have filed for unemployment, how many others are not working. But the connectivity is critical. So I appreciate the people in your civic group and the companies that are investing in the infrastructure for connectivity.
Yeah, thank you so much. Actually, for the last 2 years, our civic participants have actually used broadband as one of their projects for their community and impact initiatives. And the white papers for that, I think, will be incredibly important moving forward. So we're proud of the work that they've been doing. The next question is actually from Chuck Marks, and his question is, what are the expected impacts on the summer tourist season that the region depends on to provide critical income to so many businesses and individuals?
Yeah, I think I mentioned earlier in the PowerPoint a couple of 100,000 Virginians that are involved in the restaurant industry. I will tell you that hotel tourism employs the most number of people throughout Virginia and has a huge economic impact in the Commonwealth of Virginia. So there will be an impact in Hampton Roads. If you think about the region from Colonial Williamsburg all the way to the beaches and Virginia Beach, and every great asset in between, some of the most significant museums and some of the best culture that Virginia has to offer is in this southeast Hampton Roads region. There will be an impact. The crystal ball I have is not clear on what the percentage will be, Sarah, but I think it will be a significant impact. And one of the reasons we want this commission, the governor's appointed, to do its work quickly is in speaking with people in the restaurant industry and in the hotel industry that are represented on that board, there is a way to dial up activity again and to begin to slowly implement some of the lessons learned from other areas so that we don't have the huge economic impact. But that is one of the areas that will be most impacted. Several of those industries, though, do have workers making or receiving income. As I mentioned, the payroll protection plan, the $978 a week, a lot of those people are going there and they're getting that income for 10 months. The hope of the Treasury and feds is that that will lessen the burden for those people. It probably won't substitute for all the money that tourists spend when they come to Virginia, but it'll help keep income in the pockets and in the bank accounts of those people who work at those industries. So it will impact sales tax more, and obviously that's something that could impact localities as well. But I don't have a crystal ball on what the impact will be in terms of how quickly people come back to history and beaches.
Right, thank you. And that, yes, only time will tell, right? I mean, that's it's kind of beyond everybody's control there. I do know that if you have any other questions, there are some other questions that are coming through, I think, right now. There is a Q&A function at the very bottom of your screen. If you use that, that's the way for us to be able to ask our special guests questions. If you use the chat function, that is for our technology experts, Mesa and Megan. So the next question that I see on here is from Giovanna, who is with Old Dominion University. She's actually one of our current class members as well. Her question is, how are businesses taking advantage of higher education institutions in the region to grow workforce talent and spur innovation?
So I'm so encouraged to be able to answer that question. Some of the thought leaders, President Broderick and several other universities in Hampton Roads, I know well, their leadership, they have really set up connectivity with some of the local businesses. And I want to encourage the utilization of internships. The opportunity to build the Hampton Roads workforce with internships, work-based learning that are meaningful. I had a conference last year where I had Glenn Carrington, the Dean of the Business School at Norfolk State University, talk about the internships that he has from Norfolk State with some of the businesses around the Commonwealth, around Hampton Roads. Some of the leading businesses are looking and hungry for internships with the university. So I want to encourage those internships. We at the State Chamber just announced a partnership with the SHEV, the organization that oversees all of higher education in Virginia. That will be more formally rolled out into an internship program at our conference later this fall. And we'd love to partner with the businesses here and the universities to connect them in internship programs. This work-based learning is going to be very important because I think we will bounce back. 2021 will be a much better year than 2020. 2022 could be a phenomenal year. And I think the stronger bridges we build between businesses, Sarah, and the university is going to make this region even stronger.
Yeah, thank you so much. One other question that we had, which actually came in before we set up the webinar, which is there's such a nationwide discussion on exactly how to reopen businesses and how to do that in a thoughtful and prudent way. And there's obviously a balancing act between ensuring public health and reawakening the economy. And we all recognize that the governor plays in that decision, but what do you feel like the business community's role is in informing that decision, and what part do you see that the businesses will play?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. If I could only answer one, that's the one I wanted to answer. And thank you for asking it before our time came to a conclusion. It's my view that the business community needs to lead on how to reopen Virginia business. We really have determined, since Dr. Fauci first said we should shelter in place for 14 days, we are sheltering in place for 6 weeks. We recognize the governor has been led by medical advisors, and that's important to keep us safe. But I think we also know that we cannot sustain our economic well-being by sheltering in place until a vaccine is provided. We don't have the runway of 12 months or 18 months. So this commission the governor has formed is going to allow us as a chamber to work with you and other chambers around the Commonwealth to identify best practices, promote those best practices, and encourage this commission to encourage the governor to begin to reopen Virginia in a way that recognizes the safety of each and every employee, recognizes the safety of their customers, but allows us to put Virginia back in the stream of commerce in order to offset some of the other unintended consequences, which could be significant, of the shelter-in-place approach to solve the healthcare crisis for COVID. I hope you all will join me in that effort. I hope we can send the surveys to your businesses represented and organizations here. And I know as we're closing, don't know if we have time for another question, but I want to thank you, Sarah, and all the people involved in Leadership Civic for learning more about your region and working towards the better and brighter future of this region.
Well, we appreciate your time today. I know that you have been incredibly busy. I have enjoyed watching some of your other Zoom webinars that you've done around the state. So thank you for all that you're doing for the Commonwealth. If anybody has any other additional questions, we have a couple more moments available to us for that. I actually did have a couple of questions that have come through before, if you're okay about us.
Sure, I'm fine. Yep.
One of those questions is a question has been made about the federal stimulus dollars meant to protect small businesses, particularly those businesses under people. We've recently heard reports about some of the larger corporations, perhaps unfairly, also receiving funding. And these larger corporations obviously employ hardworking Virginians as well. And while the guidelines for the small business loans might not be applicable, how do we support all of the workers in all of our businesses? And how do we do both of those together?
Right, so the stimulus money is intended to keep money flowing through the economy. And no government program in my mind has ever been perfect, but this particular government program was put together in less than 3 weeks. It's the largest amount of government stimulus ever before in the history of America. And that money was distributed throughout. Many of the banks that are on this call have been helpful to the local businesses to applying and receiving those loans. So I think overall, it will be considered a success in terms of how this program was put together and distributed. Nevertheless, there have been some businesses, publicly traded companies that have gotten loans that really should have gone to small businesses. I heard the Treasury Secretary today announce that they'll have 2 weeks to return that without penalty, now that they know who those companies are. And I think they'll get those returned and distributed back out. Not that it's a Virginia company, but Shake Shack, for example, got $10 million, and they immediately decided that they shouldn't really receive that money, and they returned that as well. So we're seeing businesses return that money, and hopefully the Treasury will get it back out through our local banks to businesses that need it. But again, they can be small business loans with a G in front of it because they get to be grants, so they're loans, if you will, and those will be forgiven if they can keep their employees in place. If individuals are furloughed, they can tap into that enhanced unemployment I talked about earlier.
That's great. Thank you so much. We are so grateful to you. And I know that you have another call that you are running to right now. So please know how much we appreciate you. We would be very, very happy to distribute any materials and any surveys or anything out to our alumni base. I know that they would like to be a big part of that discussion and also a part of the solution. So thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Sarah. Sorry for the technology glitch. Thanks for being patient with me, and I wish you all good health and prosperity. Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Stay safe and well. Thank you. I'd like to welcome some of our new guests that have just joined us this afternoon. We are giving everybody in true civic style. We're sorry that we're not offering you the hospitality of our catering that we usually do. I know normally it would be chocolate covered strawberries time, I believe, in the afternoon, but we do encourage you to maybe grab that cup of tea or maybe that cup of coffee. We are going to begin our afternoon session in just a few moments. I'm actually going to steal the floor for a couple of minutes. And actually talk to you about some of our upcoming virtual sessions that we have. Again, my sincere apologies to anybody who struggled to get onto the webinar this afternoon. We are just like every other business out there. We are ever evolving and we are learning our new technology options out there. I have a fantastic team that works with me, and I'm not sure if they're able to put their cameras on, but I do want to say a very, very big thank you to Amasa Smith and to Megan Shuford. I'm not sure if Megan can put her camera on, who have been working tirelessly in the background, making sure that everybody can get on this call today, and making sure that Barry DuVal was able to get back on. I do think that the freeze dance that we did with Barry was kind of a fun way for us to know that broadband is going to be incredibly important. One of the things that we wanted to talk to you about is upcoming programming, and I know that Amasa is going to change one of the slides over to show you some of those dates. We actually have some virtual programming coming up on May the 5th. and that is from 11 till noon. For anybody who was on earlier on, you heard me talk about the fact that Doug Smith, who is president and CEO of the Hampton Roads Alliance, will be joining us to talk about the 757 Business Recovery Forum, and also to talk about the results of the two-wave business survey that got sent out. I'm putting a plug out there. If you have not had the chance to fill this survey in, please go ahead and do so. Your voice needs to be heard. It's important for us to know what our business community needs. And Doug will be going through and delving a little bit deeper with some of the other organizations that joined him in collaborating on this project to talk about the findings and also how this will impact our businesses moving forward. On May the 14th, we're actually going to have a morning program session where we're going to talk to some of our nonprofit partners. As you know, many of our nonprofit partners have been out on the forefront of this pandemic, and they have been working tirelessly. And we're going to talk to them a little bit more about how they foresee the pandemic affecting their funding streams, how they've had to really change their business models, and how they've adapted so quickly on that, really on so little funding that they have. And then we'll be talking to some of our healthcare professionals as well, and talking about what their work is and how they have been obviously on the front lines, but also how they see this might change the healthcare industry moving forward. The afternoon session will be the CIVIC class of 2020's Community Impact Initiative presentations. And we are really thrilled to tell you about these. They have done such a phenomenal job on these projects. We have 5 projects in total, and every single one of these projects will be used in the community moving forward. Broadband, and I'll say it again, broadband will be something that will not disappear. It will stay with us. And they have been looking to really find out you know, what the Hampton Roads region already has, and collecting that data ready for the next group of the class of 2021 to take those findings and move forward with it. We're collaborating with Jim Spoor on that with Reinvent Hampton Roads, and we're really excited to be able to share those findings. Campus 757 is a project that really has taken, it's just taken off, and we're excited about it. Kurt Krause, who is in the CIVIC class, had originally started a campus called Campus Norfolk. This is an opportunity for us to be able to capture the interns that come into the region and really show them what the region has to offer, to try and prevent that brain drain, but also to bring new brains into the community. We worked with Sean Avery and Whitney Lester with the Hampton Roads Workforce Council, and Campus 757 now has received funding in order to be able to really take off and become something that has a actual end result, which we're really excited about. So again, we do hope that you'll join us for these presentations to learn out more. Hospitality is an industry that actually has been hit very, very heavily during the pandemic. And one of our teams has been focused on what it would take to bring a hospitality school, a first-rate hospitality school here in Hampton Roads. You know, the tourism industry relies on hospitality. And the truth of the matter is every single business in Hampton Roads relies on hospitality. We are a region of people that like to welcome people in. And so this hospitality school will really set us light years away from some of the other areas in the country, and we'll have the opportunity for businesses to help to train on the job, and really to show people that the hospitality industry, there is a pathway, there is a journey for people to take to really get some of those high-paying jobs as well. So we're excited about the group's work on the hospitality school. The Mega Region Group has been taking the information from prior years that have been working on the Mega Region and really going around and seeing some of the other Mega Regions in the country and actually outside of the country as well to find out what their best practices are. we've all been talking for a really long time about how the Hampton Roads region and the Richmond region can join together and collaborate. And once we become that larger region in general, it will help us to bring in some of those larger businesses by increasing our footprint. And I think it's really amazing what this group has been doing. But Tom France has really spearheaded this conversation, and now there is the Hampton Roads and Richmond collaboration that is here, and I'm really excited about the findings of the group and what they are about to share with everybody, which is really so that Hampton Roads and Richmond can start off their mega region the right way and learn from some of the other mistakes that are out there. Our last project, project number 5, is based on resiliency and how the Hampton Roads region can take something that is a very negative issue in our region, sea level rise, and to talk about how we become an entrepreneurial hub for resiliency. How do we bring those businesses in, and how do we really take this negative aspect and turn it into something that could be a revenue generator? And they've been working very hard on their projects. All of these projects will have white papers that we'll be able to distribute out to our alumni and also to our community leadership as well. And so I do hope that you will join me on May the 14th in the afternoon from 2 until 4, so you can get more information. You can hear from those class members on the work that they have been doing. With that being said, I would like to show you a slide because I'm so proud of the class of 2020, who have just been renamed the most resilient civic class of all time. They won that on day 1 of this pandemic, and they have already had coffee connections with us. They have been working in the background on all of the fantastic work that they've been doing on these community impact initiatives. And this morning we had a session which they all joined in on as well. I know you can see all of their faces. Maybe there's some folks there that you recognize, but if you do see them out and about, please reach out to them and let them know that our alumni community is 900 plus strong. And we're here to support them as they move forward and they take their leadership roles in the community. So we will be not necessarily doing a graduation reception right this second, but as they graduate, we'll be letting you all know how you will be able to be part of those celebrations, and we're excited about it. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you're finding today's discussion as informative as I am. We have one more guest this afternoon, and he's certainly no stranger to this region or to CIVIC. To introduce our special guest, I'm pleased to welcome Kit Shope. Kit serves as the Vice President of Sustainability for the Virginia Port Authority. He's also the Chairman of the Board for CIVIC and a good friend. Kit, thanks for your leadership, particularly over the last 6 weeks as we've navigated this new reality. The floor is yours, sir.
Well, Sarah Jane, thank you. And I'd just like to say what a great group we've got today. To see 130 alumni, board members, executives, and stakeholders on today, I think is pretty exciting. And clearly none of this would have been possible without the tireless efforts of Sarah Jane, Amasa, and Megan to make sure that again, our executives, our scholars, our alumni, and all the other folks who rely on CIVIC continue to get impactful and meaningful results out of their interactions with us. So thank you. And I'd like to thank you all during these unprecedented times. And truly, I think unprecedented is a word I don't care for because very few things are. But personally and in your business, what you are each doing, I think is very important and impactful. And I'll just leave you with this before I introduce our speaker as food for thought. When we return to some sense of normalcy after this COVID pandemic begins to abate, what immutable truths are we going to take away from this? Is it the importance of our families and relationships and time spent with them? Is it the use of technology to fill in for face-to-face? Or is maybe a different way to say it is Lee Vreeland said this morning, what will your COVID-19 legacy be when we return to some sense of normalcy? And I'll just leave you all with that because I think that's a fantastic challenge. So shifting gears, I get the great honor this afternoon to introduce a gentleman who I'm proud to call my friend. He was described earlier this month in a column by Gordon Morse as the right man in the right place. And I will tell you, clearly, we all know that to be the case as we face these challenges to keep Virginia's economy healthy, diverse, and resilient. So Virginia Secretary of Finance brings to his job a wide array of experiences in commercial real estate, accounting, and education, serving for a time as the president of An Achievable Dream before being named Secretary of Transportation under Governor McAuliffe in 2014. He and his wife, Peggy, who I think, Peggy, you're also joining us today, a Civic alum and one of the greater champions of the mega region concept, have been actively involved across our community and recognized by the JCs and the Chamber of Commerce and junior achievement with their highest honors. He held the title of King Neptune 39th, I'd be remiss of saying, in 2012 Virginia Beach Neptune Festival. And then in January 2018, Governor Northam appointed Secretary Layne to his current position as Secretary of Finance. So Aubrey, with everything going on across in the Commonwealth, I'd like to thank you for taking your time away from what's got to be an insane schedule to join us and provide some insights. So even though everybody's muted, won't you help me welcome Secretary Aubrey Layne back to Civic?
Well, thanks, Kit. I appreciate being here today. I caught the tail end of Ross Grogg's talking about with the General Assembly session. He's clearly in a better position than I am with that background, with all the boats and the nice water behind him. But anyway, thank you very much again for having me. Talk a little bit today about how the business community can help in this particular crisis that we're in, and probably will end with how the state can help the business community, because I think that's where we're ultimately going to be as we navigate our way through this. But first of all, a little bit about how I can tell you the business community has helped, particularly those right there in Hampton Roads. Obviously, getting personal protection equipment has been paramount in dealing with this health crisis with COVID-19. And our main supplier is a company called Northfield Manufacturing, which is based right there in Norfolk. And that's been no easy feat, getting this equipment and having to navigate the supply chain, not only here in the United States, but obviously overseas in China. And the agents we deal with, credible people, and Northfield has stepped up and have done an incredible job for us. So we're very thankful for them, for their efforts. Dollar Tree is another company. They're based in Hampton Roads that's offered their expertise in us acquiring this much needed equipment. So the business community, and particularly those two in Hampton Roads, have been just tremendous helps to us. There are many others across the Commonwealth who have donated equipment. Dominion Resources has offered the use of their plane so we can find equipment anywhere in the United States or anywhere in the world. So it's been a great partnership working with them to help us get this much needed equipment. I should also mention the hospitals have been great to deal with, particularly Centera and Riverside. They're based in Hampton Roads, and it was a time we thought we were going to have to do surge accommodations for the overflow that may have occurred from having to deal with those patients needing hospitalization. And but both Riverside and Centera have been great partners working with us. So far, we've not needed to do that, and a lot of that goes to their ability to manage this from the hospitalization standpoint. I should also mention all businesses, thank you for obeying the governor's guidelines. I know that's not an easy feat to do, and we certainly realize that this public health crisis is also an economic crisis. But we've come from the perspective that the only way to get the economic crisis under control is to, first of all, deal with this public health crisis. And it looks like we've done a pretty good job with that. I mentioned we did not have to resort to having to have surge hospitalization. We've been able to manage the amount of equipment that we've got in to take care of that. And a lot of that has to do with companies and individuals across the Commonwealth obeying the stay-at-home order. But we do know that it's been impactful to your businesses. And what's going to be key to that is the reopening strategy that the Governor Northam just announced last Friday about how we bring back business in the Commonwealth. And let me first point out that it's not going to be like another crisis that we've had to deal with. If you think back, many of us had to deal with September 11th back in those days early in this current century. And we had a real fright, or very fearful about entering the economy, especially flying. However, the government was able to step in, and through the TSA, it might have been cumbersome, but quickly we got a handle on being able to fly again, or overcoming the public fear of flying. That's not going to be probably the case this time, and that it's not going to be government-led. So while government can put out some guidelines on social distancing, on making sure that we have a proper equipment, I'll talk a little bit more about testing. This recovery is going to be pretty much led by businesses, because businesses are going to have to prove to their customers that it's safe to go into their particular establishments, whether you're a restaurant or a gym. So unlike previous downturns, and even though this one was caused by government action with shutdown, it's not going to be led with government action coming out. It's going to be led by businesses. And so the state needs to position itself to be able to help those businesses reopen and get back to work. We think that's sooner than later. The governor mentioned that in the next couple of weeks, he will be making announcements about whether it's time to enter phase one, the CDC guidelines about being able to open certain businesses, certain sections of our economy, and I do expect that to happen. Now, Hampton Roads is going to be a big part of helping frame that discussion. There is a group that's been put together by the governor and the Secretary of Commerce, Brian Ball, and his team, looking at talking with business leaders across the Commonwealth. I know Barry DuVal was on earlier, but talking with small and large businesses how to best go about this. There are several representatives from Hampton Roads on that group. I know Bruce Thompson is on that committee. Obviously, hospitality and tourism are big industries and economic drivers that have been significantly hit by this virus. And so you guys will play a big part in helping shape the strategy that we have to reopen the business. And it is going to, as I said, require business leadership. And I think a key point to that is going to be testing. As you know, the Commonwealth of Virginia needs to ramp up its testing. Quite frankly, we're not where we need to be. We're doing now about 4,000 tests per day, and we think we need to be up to about 12 to 15,000 tests a day to really get to the point where the public feels comfortable in being able to discern whether or not individuals have issues and if they're safe going into a particular establishment. A current resident of Hampton Roads, Dr. Karen Remley, has been named as she's the former health commissioner. She's been named as the chairperson of the group that's going to be looking at testing as we go forward, and also contact tracing. That is, being able to make sure, instead of quarantining the entire state, we will just administer those measures that are necessary to keep our public safe on an individual basis or a particular group basis, instead of having these statewide issues. And I think that's going to be key until at least there is more therapeutic options that are available, and certainly once we get a vaccination in place that can get rid of this COVID-19. Now, having said that, that's probably some months off, if not a year. So we do believe testing and contact tracing are going to be with us for the foreseeable future. But as I said, as we get the public health crisis under control, and we're getting closer as we learn to do that, and also to learn to live with this until a vaccine is found, the Commonwealth will shift its focus not totally away from health, but to economic recovery. Certainly, with all the funds that have been passed recently, the CARES Act, the federal authorities, the measures taken by the Federal Reserve, the Commonwealth will help steward those to help its citizens and businesses get back and get the funds they need to stay in place, whether it is benefits for unemployment, all the way up to the loans that have been made available through those various programs, and even the grants that have been made available. Certainly workforce training is going to be a part of this. We're going to have many jobs that are going to be different as we go forward. And a lot of people are out of work. Some industries may not come back the way they were. So we're going to have to retrain our workforce, which is something we were working on before all this. It's going to be taking more of a significant role as we go forward. One of the things that the Commonwealth did in conjunction with the budget that was just passed was we established what's called the COVID-19 Relief Fund, where we expect about $150 million will be available over the next year to be used to help particularly small businesses get back on their feet. Homelessness will be another issue that we'll use those monies for. And so in addition to the federal monies, the state will be providing some of its resources to help supplant those monies. And finally, just like Kit did, he left you with a thought. Let me leave you with a few things before we open this up for questions that you might think about. If you go back and look at all the major pandemics that have occurred across the world over the years, society has always been changed on the other side. So when we talk about normal, it's probably going to be a new normal. And here's a few things that we're concentrating on, and I think would be very, very significant to business. One of the trends is going to be business continuity. Many of you already had those plans. You now had to put them to test. And that's going to be a significant part, we believe, of going forward, because there's no guarantee with all the changes, whether it's climate change, whether it's other types of technological changes, whether it's changes in the supply lines. Business continuity is going to take on a much different and more significant role because those businesses that can function through all sorts of different types of environments are the ones that are going to be able to prosper. Telecommuting, I believe, is here to stay. The state of Virginia has over 100,000 employees, and the vast majority of those are now telecommuting. And I would bet if you would have asked the state 6 months ago if we were going to be able to perform all our functions and do that, we would have been hesitant to say we could. But that's been the case. So the amount of physical plant that's going to be needed in the future, you may see be different as businesses figure out there's a lot of things that they can do from remote locations. Online buying is going to continue to be with us, and it's probably going to hasten the demise of some of the current retailers. I don't expect some of them to come back, but from people being at home, they're now more comfortable with buying online. That was a trend that was going on before this, and I think this new normal is going to be even more representative of that. And finally, one thing that's been dear to my heart over the years is transportation, particularly mass transit, and how that is used in the urban areas, and how many people are going to be let on specific trains or buses, and how we keep people safe. That's going to be something we're going to have to think through, because I think it's going to be a fairly big push for people to get back in their cars. Why? Because not only is it social distancing, but as you all know, gasoline and oil prices are at historic lows and are expected to be that way for the foreseeable future. So those are just some of the trends we're looking at. I want to thank you all for, again, all the participation you've done with the Commonwealth. I know it's been hard on business as being a former business owner and running a business. I know it has not been easy for you to live through this. The state understands that, and we will be there on the other side of this to help offer what assistance we can. And Kit, with that, if there's any questions, I'd be happy to entertain those. And again, thank you for having me here today.
Secretary Layne, thank you so very much. This is Sarah
Jane. How are you?
How are you doing? We really appreciate your leadership. Thank you so much. We appreciate all that you're doing up in Richmond. We know that you're working long hours there. We also appreciate your insight today. So thank you so much for coming on this call. I think we have one question here from Dr. Lee Vreeland. I know you know Lee very well.
I know Dr. Vreeland, yes.
She had a question for you. She said, first off, thank you for your leadership during this pandemic. What advice would you provide educational organizations as we plan for the summer and fall? Yes,
that is certainly a conversation we are having here as not just for K through 12, but higher education, trying to determine what that's going to be. I think the overwhelming understanding is we'd like to have people back in their classrooms. I think a lot of that's going to have to be contingent upon what happens over the next month or so, particularly with the ability to test. But I do know that, quite frankly, there will be monies that will be set aside to help those institutions, both from the federal and state level. But I think the more we can get back to a somewhat normal, and again, that may be a different normal, as you know, the virus tends to impact those people that have either an immune deficiency or older in age. And so therefore, the teachers and the professors tend to be a little more concerned than, not that the students aren't, because we don't want to have them being sick either, but certainly there are a lot of different stakeholders in this. But I don't think there's any one up here that doesn't want to see that our universities and our secondary schools get open during the fall. But again, it's going to be dependent upon, and I'm very comforted that our governor is a physician, and looking at the data, and I'm sure he'll make the right decision in that. But I think everybody's leaning towards we'd like to get back to as close to normal as possible.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we all agree with that. Tanya Bullock has asked, what % of the population in Virginia is still working right now? That was actually a question that was brought up earlier on with Barry DuVal, and he mentioned that you would probably have some insight in that.
I do, and we are faring better than this in many states. Not that we're faring well, but I got a report yesterday, about 13% of the state is now doesn't have a job. Now, that is not the unemployment rate, because many of those are not looking for a job. There were some before. The unemployment rate, we think, probably is around 10%. We do expect that to continue to grow a little bit. And of course, depending on what industry you're in, Sarah Jane, that could be significantly higher. But Virginia went into this in a very, very good position. We were the top ranked state for business. Unemployment down at about 2.5% historic levels. We are blessed with having essential industries like the shipyards in Hampton Roads. We have a lot of federal employees. You know, we take a lot of grief sometimes in coming out of recessions. We don't come out of them as quickly because of our reliance on the federal government, but that tends to shield us as we go in. So while we're not happy, we are encouraged that we're faring through this a little better than most. We think we'll respond quicker than most states coming out of this once we get to the other side. Nobody's happy with 13% of our people that are not working. But having said that, we believe that is a number that we can quickly try to get back into the workforce on the other side of this.
Yes, thank you so much. One of the questions from Jeff Wilson, he's actually in the Civic class of 2020. He had asked about the state of Virginia being one of the only states not to offer relief or extensions in filing for their taxes. Sorry, have to throw this one out to you. He was asking, you know, how citizens would be expected to make their tax payments if they haven't got that cash income. And he was wondering if you had any insight in that.
Oh, I certainly have insight in that. I'm a CPA and a former accountant myself, and I've had lots of discussions with the Virginia State Society on this topic in that regard. It is a constitutional issue for us. Unlike the federal government, our year end is June 30th. The federal government's year end is September 30th. So when they move the filing from April to July, they still stay within their same fiscal year end. On top of that, we all know the federal government can do two things that Virginia can't. First of all, it can print money. And second of all, it doesn't have to balance its budget. We are constitutionally required to balance our budget. Now, Virginia is heavily reliant on two revenue streams. Sales taxes, about 20%, but about 70% of our monies are from personal income taxes. And so the last quarter of our year, that is April through June, our heavy receipt period for us. Unfortunately, this crisis hit right at the beginning of the fourth quarter. And if we were to have moved the tax filing, we were able to move it from May to June. But if we would have moved it until July 15th, that would have pushed about $2 billion in revenues into another fiscal year, causing us in a deficit situation. You can't borrow to offset a deficit. That's one of the things we looked at. And that would have required significant reductions to the state's budget in a time of a personal and a health crisis going on. We did not think that was prudent. So we pushed it back as far as we could without getting into constitutional issues of about a deficit, because quite frankly, we have about a $22 billion annual budget. However, we were in the last 3 months. As you know, at the early March, nobody thought we were going to be in this position. So spending wasn't curtailed. We would have had to cut about 40% of spending in the last quarter, significantly cutting into our ability to respond. Most of our budget is pass-throughs or direct or mandated by federal or state laws. And therefore, that is the reason why we could not push it any further than June the 1st. And so I've had a lot of conversations on this. And on one other topic, filing is not the same as the payment date. Our filing of the returns are not due until November 1st, but you must pay us if you owe us by June the 1st, or you have penalties and interest. So I know it's a little bit complicated, but it is a constitutional issue that neither the governor nor the General Assembly could address.
Well, thank you. I knew you'd have the answer. I knew that. Well, we are so appreciative to you, and it is exactly right. You are the right person in that seat, and I'm sorry that we're all in this position right now, but thank you for every single thing that you're doing up there, and thank you so much for your leadership and being here today. I hope you all will come and join us again for some of our other virtual sessions, and Secretary Layne, again, many, many thanks. Couple of things that we wanted to point out.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much. As we continue through our virtual sessions, May the 5th is our next date that's coming up. We'll send you an email with all of that information. And then we have another date on May the 14th. We do hope that you will join us. We also hope that you will stay safe and well. And we appreciate everybody's leadership here in the Hampton Roads region and everything that you're doing to help keep your employees, your family, and yourselves safe. On that note, thank you for being here for our very first virtual session with CIVIC Leadership Institute. Have a great afternoon.